So welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. As people come in, we'll just kind of let them in. So if you see people popping up on the screen, we'll just let them in as we kind of get started. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel Morgan. I'm one of the program specialists here at the Nebraska Arts Council. For those of you who weren't with us last month, the goal of these sessions is to provide a space for arts organizations and administrators to share ideas, to be inspired, to ask questions peer-to-peer, and just have that space where you can share ideas and be inspired. The format the way it's going to work today, Suzanne Wise is going to give an update from the Nebraska Arts Council. We'll hear from our speakers, and then we'll go into breakout rooms at the end so you guys can visit. Remember, in the breakout rooms, the staff of the Nebraska Arts Council, we are not going to be in your room, so you get to talk about whatever you want to, and we'll go over that before we break out. Please feel free to use the chat features. The chat feature, if you have any questions, I'll try to moderate it. The presenters will answer any questions at the end of their presentation. If there's questions we don't get to, we'll put you in touch with the presenters so that you can continue to have that conversation offline, because we want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're really trying to keep this at an hour because I know we all have other things to get to, like other Zoom meetings, right, on our calendar. The speakers today include Suzanne Wise, who's the Executive Director of the Nebraska Arts Council, Jamie Ulmer with the Beatrice Community Players, and Matthew Boring. And Matthew, I had to look up your title. It is the Associate Director of Marketing and Patron Development with the Lead Center for Performing Arts. So that's a mouthful, that really.
Yours truly.
Right? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne.
Well, yes, and this is Zoom meeting number 3 for me, and I have a 4th later. So, yeah, just the state of the being at the moment. So, hi everyone, good to see you all. I'll make it brief. There's a couple things. One of them has to do with license plates, and I'm assuming a lot of you got online and voted for your favorite. And Rachel, you were going to pop up the one that won. It's easier for Rachel to do it than me. This is the one that won. It's called Mosaic, and it's by Danielle DeWeese, a recent graduate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, both in art and in graphic design. And so she was kind of well positioned to put something like this together. As you can see, the middle part had to be kind of whited out a little bit, because for the Department of Motor Vehicles, the most important thing to them is that you can read the letters and the numbers. So this will be on sale for only $5 more than what you're currently paying, January 1. If you want a custom plate, and I've already kind of figured out what mine's going to be, it's $40. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can get it right away if you want, and they basically give you a credit for the amount of time between the day you purchase this and when your actual car registration comes due. Or you can wait for your car registration to come due, and then you just get online at the Department of Motor Vehicles and you can scroll through all of the license plates that are available, and you'll come upon this one. Any questions? Yeah, people really enjoyed it, so we're happy that it won. So the money, as you may remember, goes to help fund the cultural districts, which again was a bill that the legislature passed this past session. The other thing is on Thursday, October 29th at 7 p.m., Governor's Arts Award, the virtual Governor's Arts Award, will be aired, and Chad will be sending out more information about it with links and that sort of thing. You can watch it in a variety of ways. And we have already given the awards to the awardees and allowed them to kind of record a thank you. So that will be interspersed with, I'm reading the citation, Candy Henning, our board chair, makes an introduction. Music by Olga Smola, a really talented violinist from Omaha. And some of the winners, if you didn't know, Becky Noble of Omaha South High School, and Jerome Dubas, who teaches at Grand Island Senior High. The artists were Dave Stewart from Hastings College, and Herb Mingery from Bartlett originally, who lives in Colorado at the moment, or has for quite a while. Matt and Shelley Sennert from McCook for their performing arts venue as part of their B-Rock Cafe. And Friday Live, NET's program that many of you have actually been on yourselves. The Fremont Area Art Association, Opera Omaha, Linda Garcia and Garen Coons as the Heritage winners. And then we have a new award this year called Accessibility Award, and those are for organizations that have really done a good job of making the arts truly accessible. And the winners are Carolyn Owen Anderson, who just recently retired from Y Arts, which is an Omaha program solely devoted to providing arts experiences to the widest range of disability you can imagine. And then Lincoln Community Playhouse's Penguin Project. So those are the winners. It's very cool. And I have not seen any of the videos of the awardees talking back to us. So I'm looking forward to it as well. Any questions? It's October 29th at 7. Okay, that is it for me. Now I'm looking forward to hearing what Matthew and Jamie have to say.
Great. Jamie, we're going to start with you.
All right, let me get my screen up here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, my name is Jamie Ulmer. I'm the Managing Artistic Director at Community Players in Beatrice. And I'm going to talk about what we've done in order to reopen our facility to live in-person events. And we have been having people in the building attending shows since August. Real quickly, oh, come on, computer. Real quickly, for those of you who don't know about Community Players, we are the community theater located in downtown Beatrice. We have a black box style auditorium, usually seats about 200 people. There's a picture of the auditorium down below there. We have a staff of 4 with approximately 150 volunteers every year. We produce 9 shows, 6 in a regular season and 3 in a family and outreach season. And then we also do other outreach partnerships and collaborations with other organizations in our community. Between 6,000 and 7,000 patrons each year are impacted by our programming, and our pre-pandemic budget was approximately $220,000. I have no idea what our current budget is because we're actually only budgeting on a quarterly basis as our programming scope changes so much. So we're just kind of taking it a quarter at a time. So how did we develop our plan? Well, we're constantly looking at resources, and I think I have been on more webinars. I have stared into this computer monitor more than I have my entire life. Lots of webinars, Facebook groups, and just other conversations with other organizations around the country. 2 kind of important resources for us was the American Association of Community Theater, which has a very active Facebook group about this topic, and also a whole bunch of webinars that they have done on reopening. and also some guides from organizations like the Event Safety Alliance. Of course, we also looked at the Nebraska and our local health district guidelines. However, we are having to do a lot of our own COVID tracking because our health district really up until recently, our health district includes 5 counties. And up until recently really wasn't doing any kind of breaking down of numbers for individual specific counties. And so we have our own spreadsheet since July that's tracking all of our local numbers. Let's say another great resource has been, there's an organization called Impacts Experience, which covers a lot about arts patrons' attitudes about a whole bunch of topics, but they were also doing a weekly survey of how arts patrons are responding to the pandemic. And so some of those things influenced our plan. And then of course, like everyone, we did surveys, we did a virtual town hall just to get community feedback on what people wanted and what they were comfortable with. So what is our plan? It can be broken down into 4 categories: infrastructure, audience behavior, backstage and rehearsal procedures, and communication. So first, a little bit about infrastructure. Here you see a picture of our auditorium as it is right now. We removed half of the seats from our auditorium as a black box. It's relatively easy to move our seating. I say relative because those seats are surprisingly heavy. But we removed every other row from the auditorium, and we did that so that it allows patrons to move easily down the aisle without having to do that awkward butt shuffle as you move past somebody who is already seated in the aisle and you have to get to the other end. Now you can just walk down that empty aisle in the row in front of you. You also will see that there's some cardboard cutouts in our auditorium. Those aren't there for social distancing because our seating is always reserved, but they're actually there to make the auditorium feel a little more full for both the patrons and the performers. Because we can seat with these restrictions of between 30 and 50 people. Well, we put 20 cardboard cutouts in there, and it starts to make it look like the auditorium is much more full. And it's a surprising optical illusion. Also, of course, like everyone else, we've done other things like including plexiglass on our box office. We've upgraded all of our public restrooms to touchless paper towel dispensers, soap dispensers, faucets, and so forth. There's hand sanitizer dispensers everywhere, and we disinfect all of the auditorium seats after each performance. And soon, like in the next week or so, we will have air scrubbers installed in our HVAC system. In regards to audience behavior, we do require every member of the general public who enters the building to be wearing appropriate face coverings at all times. We also do require our front of house volunteers to always be wearing face coverings. We are seating with physical distancing. By the way, I use the term physical distancing as opposed to social distancing because there's really nothing social about having to be physically apart from people. We switched to only doing telephone and in-person ticket sales for a while because we didn't think our online box office software was able to do physical distancing. But then we found out that it can, which is awesome. And so that means that we don't have to just lock into, there's 2 seats here, there's 3 seats here, there's 2 seats here with the distance. What our software can do is a family of 4 picks 4 seats and it automatically puts the buffer around them so that the computer does it for us. We were having to do that manually at the beginning of all of this. Let's see, with our current health measures, in theory, we could have 75% capacity, but no. With physical distancing in place, that means that we can seat maximum 50 to 75 people if they all come in groups of 8. We do temperature checks at the door. As I think a lot of people are aware, the jury is still kind of out on the effectiveness of temp checks. But I view it as taking your shoes off at the airport. It's the theater of the security, which I think is just as important as the actual safety that it's providing. As far as programs go, we still do have physical programs that we are handing out to people. We have one dedicated usher who is masked and gloved, and they are the only person who ever reaches into that box that hasn't been opened since it came from the printer to distribute the programs. We are emailing programs out to everyone, however, but also a lot of our patrons are older and very adamantly say that they don't have email. They don't own a computer. So how do we get them a program otherwise? Entering and exiting the auditorium, someone holds all the doors at all times. Also at the end of every performance, the audience is dismissed by rows. So it's like a wedding reception, you know. Really quickly, backstage wise, we do temperature and health screenings for all of our volunteers when they arrive for rehearsals. And we also require everyone to wash their hands immediately on arrival. Masks are required for most rehearsals. You can see in that photo there, there was a read-through of a show and they were wearing the face shields, and now they're saying face shields may not be effective, and you just got to keep track of all of this information as it comes at you. But we don't require masks during performances for the performers, but they do have to put their masks on as soon as they're off stage. And also during rehearsals, if we're doing a lot of one-person shows or series of monologues, and so if it's only one person on stage and the director and stage managers are 20 feet away, then the individuals don't have to wear masks during the rehearsal. When they're then backstage again, though, the masks do have to come back on. For shows, we have staggered call time so that no more than 2 people are ever in a dressing room at the same time. We also do enhanced cleaning of all surfaces, props at the end, and so forth at the end of rehearsals. And we ask the cast and crews to participate in that cleaning process because I feel like it gives them ownership over making sure that we're following all of our guidelines and procedures. We end rehearsals 10 minutes early to do that. And we also have just a skeleton crew, not skeletons, you know, Halloween skeletons, but bare minimum of backstage crew and minimum of people in the control booth. Normally we'd have 2 to 3 people in the control booth for a performance. We've reconfigured the computers and the control boards so that one person can run all the equipment for a performance. Another, I think, really important thing has been frequent and transparent communication. And obviously we communicate in all the ways listed there, but all of our emails and mailings have our current COVID procedures listed there. That's the little infographic that we've been using for that. We have a dedicated page on our website, like I'm sure everyone does, but this page is updated every week with the latest risk dial and placing the risk dial changes in the context for our community. We also are communicating why we are making programming choices and changes on that page on our website as well. So what's been the cost of all of this that we've done? We've spent approximately $5,000 on various equipment upgrades and PPE. I kept saying PPP when I was practicing this, and I was like, no. Some of the upgrades that we've made have been actually pretty nice, like the touchless features in the restroom. This is just a nice general upgrade. And the enhanced cleaning, I'll be honest, the green room smells nicer than it has smelled in decades. So what is the programming that we've done in person? Well, since August, we have produced 2 shows, 2 full productions, and then next week we're actually opening another one. Picture there on the ones on the, as you're looking at the screen there, the guy with the open mouth there, that's Outrageous Adventures of Sheldon and Mrs. Levine, which was a 2-person show. Picture in the middle was from Silent Sky, a 5-person show. The picture on the side there is just the way I go out in public. And it was also from our ghost tour, walking ghost tours that we did last week. And next week we open a play of monologues called Murderers. What has the reaction from our community been? It's been very positive. We are surveying our patrons after every performance, asking them if they feel safe, if they feel like we have taken adequate precautions, and 100% of the surveys that we've gotten back so far have said, absolutely, we feel safe, And then these are some of the other comments that they've made. Another purpose of those cardboard cutouts is to encourage people to take selfies with them. And so I gleaned these from some social media so that people can tell their friends that they are feeling safe attending a live in-person event. Because some of the studies are telling us that people will return to live events when they see their friends and neighbors safely doing so. So we are trying to give them the tools to communicate that to their friends and neighbors. And it's taking pictures with the Phantom. So yeah, that kind of wraps up what I have prepared. So are there any questions?
So one question that did come across in the chat is, are you booking for 2021? So how far out are you looking at programming?
So we are looking at through 2021. We've got several contingency plans of what we're doing. The shows that we are doing right now have been what we've been calling our COVID substitutions. We initially hadn't announced Murderers, which we're opening next week, wasn't part of our original planned season of shows, but we're substituting that in. We're also going to be doing a one-person show in November. Again, wasn't part of our original plan, but we're doing it now. It's a George Burns Say Goodnight, Gracie. Yeah, we've got plans for what we're doing through June, with the hope of being able to return to normal in January. We know that's probably not going to happen now, and so we are, considering all contingencies, and I've got about 4 different backup plans. And I see Denise asks, have the productions been financially successful? Yes, but that's also because we are doing really low intensity shows as far as production expenses. They've all been small cast shows. The picture on the screen right now, which is from Outrageous Adventures, the only expense we had was royalties on the show, because everything else was in stock already. We spent nothing on it. And the same with the show that we're opening next week. We've spent maybe $50 to produce the show, because it all came from inventory, what was in stock. Being thrifty and cheap does have its advantages sometimes. But I think the most important thing has been continuing to be engaged with the community and offering that live programming. Everything that we've done so far, I should also mention, we have offered a streaming option of. That we have gotten rights to film a performance, and we've edited it together, and we put that, we've been able to make it available for patrons who can't attend in person to be able to watch it from home. And we've received a lot of positive feedback from our patrons about having that option. I know some of our patrons who really almost literally have not left their house since March. And they are still watching all the shows and participating in our programming that way.
Great. Are there other questions for Jamie? All right. Well, if you think of something later, feel free, like I said, to use the chat, and we can certainly ask him. And so now, Matthew.
Great, thank you. I'll start with just Denise's question about are they financially successful? The answer for us has been yes, with donor support. So, as with most of our programming, ticket sales are, 50% of the expenses, with the other half being donor support. And we found that for our performances so far, especially our individual donors have been very supportive of the Leeds Center reopening, the Leeds Center having live performances, and have been, very, very generous in moving their support from one show that may have been scheduled into the revised season that we booked. So combination of ticket sales and donor support, yes. I'm Matthew Boring. I manage the ticketing, fundraising, and marketing at the Lead Center, celebrating my 10th year, coming off our highest year of ticket sales in Lead Center history last season. And I'm quite certain this will be the lowest year of Lead Center ticket sales. Just 2 weeks after our first canceled performance, we launched Lead Live Online. And we said that, a lot of times we bring the top artists in the world to Nebraska, but we're able to share Nebraska artists with the world, online. And these are just a small sampling of some of the artists that we had. We did bring a couple artists who we had planned to present nationally, like Michael Landra there, Irish singer, and did present him, but it was mostly focused on Nebraska audiences. And just between March and August, we had over 300,000 minutes of video viewed on our Facebook page, which was nearly triple what we had from the previous year. Everything from, theater for the very young with puppet jams, space yoga events, all types of different things. You can see this one, just within 2 days of the live event, there were only about 80 people who participated live, but we were able to reach over 6,000 reach with 1,500 viewers just within 2 days. We also launched a neighborhood concert series we called Music on the Move. This is Orion Walsh going through the East Campus neighborhood. We just brought that back for several performances the last couple weeks here. But we know that at the end of the day, part of what makes the Lead Center Nebraska's home for the arts is that shared in-person performance experience. And so while we knew it was going to be a while before we could have 2,000 plus people at the Lead Center, like in this photo from the Midtown Men, we knew we wanted to do something. And I think the first thing that we really knew was that we needed to bring all of our departments together to solve the problem. It couldn't be just a marketing issue or just a facilities and production issue. It was really going to require staff from all departments to meet really regularly, go over a lot of the issues that we were having and could anticipate, as well as collaborating with the University of Nebraska on, when can we be back in the building? When can we be back on campus? It became clear pretty quickly that, they were interested in using the Lead Center as a classroom, so thinking about what are the implications of that. And I think at the end of the day, patrons expect, to have a safe, comfortable, and enjoyable venue experience all the time. And that doesn't change. And I think the burden as a venue manager is actually higher for us right now. Because if patrons come in and they don't see that, all the staff, volunteers, and audience members are wearing masks, they probably won't return. If they're not seeing the cleaning happening, they might not return. If they see lots of density, lots of crowds, lots of lines, they may not return. And you're only going to get one shot at that, especially as people are maybe coming out for the first live event that they've been to in months. Obviously, as Jamie mentioned, I also prefer the physical distancing versus the social distancing phrase. We knew we were going to have a lot more space everywhere, inside the hall, at the entryways, the exits, the lobbies even. And so there's a few things that we did. As much as possible, we try and make it so that patrons are able to come, crawl over as few people as possible, ideally no people, to get to their seats, as well as eliminating the lines throughout the lobbies. And what we decided we needed was to have different seating configurations depending on what the type of event was. So as I mentioned for classes, so this is an example of the layout we're using for chemistry classes at the Lead Center. If intro to chemistry wasn't hard enough, now some students are seated fairly significantly far away, while participating in the class. We can accommodate up to about 300, and we're having about 2,000 students a week during the day in the venue. Again, with no positive COVID results coming from Lead Center attendance, which is really encouraging. Here's an example of what that looks like in person. Obviously, adjustments for the professors as well to be teaching with masks on, as well as, separate microphone packs, for each professor who's there. And it was one of those things where the further you get into the process, just more and more questions come up, and we had to reassemble that cross-department team to be able to solve those and move ahead quickly. Here's an example of the map we're using for our primary season performances. There's some pros and cons to this type of setup. One of the benefits is, for households of 4 or 5, we're able to increase our capacity by having some of those larger areas. Obviously, someone has to be willing to buy 5 tickets or have a household of 5 that wants to come, or otherwise we end up with empty seats. And so I think one kind of anticipated problem that we're continuing to evaluate really weekly is, at what point are we okay taking something that was going to be like a block of 5 or 6 seats and making it available in 2? And we've generally decided that about 10 days out, we look at all the seat maps and put them all back down into pairs. The ones that are 3s, you'll see there's a lot of 3s in the center. Just right out of the gate, we will sell those as 2 or 3 seats. It's just when you start taking the ones that are in 4s and 5s, it's a little bit more difficult decision because of the impact on capacity. We can hold about 600 using this map, and our normal capacity is about 2,300. Here's a photo from the first public performance we did with Heart Dance Academy. This is an example where, this is a sold out performance. So this is all the way to the top, all seats sold. And I think I took this on my phone maybe 5 minutes before the show started. So I think about everyone was in the venue. I believe we've had about 8,000 total patrons in the hall since August. And I can tell you that, reports from our events and facilities staff, less than 10 people have arrived without masks on before they came in the building. Almost all of them, were greeted outside by one of our front of house members and said, oh, it's in my bag, it's in my car, can I go get it? We've had boxes of disposable masks available to them. We've had very, very few patron interactions, where they weren't supportive of that policy. I think it's actually what they expect, which is encouraging. We did do a 10 Ways the Lead Center is Keeping You Safe campaign. And I think it kind of highlights a lot of the things, touchless bathrooms, have like those daytime classes, we're able to clean the whole building before it needs to open, was an important thing. Obviously masks being required by everyone. We appreciate Michael and Angela, who are two of the parents that attended the Heart Dance, for sharing this photo with us. Hand sanitizer locations all over the building. Increased air filtration and quality. This was really one of the big takeaways from the International Association of Venue Managers. The MERV, MERV ratings of your air filters, which is something that I have no expertise nor desire to have expertise in. But like going from a MERV 11 to a MERV 13 rating really does make a substantial difference in the turnover of the air, the amount of fresh air that you're bringing in, how often it cycles, and the filtration of it. So I would definitely consider looking into that. Obviously, social distancing indicators anywhere that there might be lines. We hadn't previously had microphones installed in our ticket office, and this was a quick little, I think they were about $40 a piece off of Amazon. Certainly seemed worth a shot, and that's helped to eliminate some of the crowding and people up against the glass. Opening dressing rooms, so dressing rooms that might normally hold 20 or 30, making those available for just like 4 or 5 people at a time. And then as much as possible, communicating with performers, especially community performers. We did have musical travel from New York, an off-Broadway production. And they were as supportive as you could ever imagine an artist would be. But we found, like with the dance recitals, our production crew literally went through and marked, glow tape every spot on the ground. Like, you can stand here, you can stand here, you can stand here. And they did that both on stage and in the backstage areas, which helped to eliminate the crowding. Currently, we're not allowing any concession sales. That's something that we're obviously reevaluating. We just decided as an organization that if you're selling concessions, people will want to consume the concessions, so then they're not wearing their masks. So that was a decision we made as a venue that we were going to do for the meantime. I think the last thing I would mention is just the buy-in that you have between your staff, your volunteers, and everyone starts with having clear expectations. And we did that by literally outlining every expectation we had in detail for the performers, for the crew, for the audience, how that would be followed. And we distributed this. We talked about it, and we told our employees, we want feedback on this. We told our artists, we want feedback on this. And so I think just, having the more that you can detail your procedures, the more you'll be able to anticipate, some of the questions and things that you may need to respond to. And that really helped us throughout the process. So thanks for your time, and happy to take any questions that you have.
One question I have for either of you, Matt or Jamie, have you had any positive cases, or maybe the scare of a positive case, and how has that changed the procedures that you came up with?
We haven't had any positive cases so far. We have talked to the health department about, what would be required if that happened, what that process would look like. And for us, that it starts with having assigned seats. I think similar as Jamie mentioned, like having assigned seats really helps to narrow it down so that, if there was a positive case, we're not trying to do contact tracing on someone who is seated 100 feet away from someone else. I had a friend who I'd been, performing with. We played in a brass quintet, very distanced apart, but his roommate actually tested positive. And so then I wasn't able to work on site until he was able to get his negative test back. And so some of those factors have impacted our staffing, where like maybe we had a production member who wasn't able to work for several days. I've had an intern that was scheduled to, work our donor entrance one night and, wasn't able to because she had a roommate that was waiting on a test. So being able to adapt, and quickly restaff things was also important.
Yeah, same with us, is that we haven't had any actual cases related to participation either in the audience or as volunteers and performers, but we have had a few scares along the way, and one of the biggest things has been being flexible and we're in the business where we always try to anticipate all of the problems, and as arts administrators, we're used to planning a year and a half in advance, and now we're planning next week and hoping that plan is still relevant. And so, but as incidents come up, like we had someone who their child was sent home because they were displaying two symptoms of COVID, which was a stomach ache and a headache. It was a middle school student. It was Monday. The kid didn't want to go to school, but that actor, couldn't rehearse. And so we had to develop what kind of our plans were, how would it affect the performance. And so we got a fairly detailed outline now of, okay, if you have a close contact who has to quarantine or whatever, we do X, Y, and Z. If it's you, then, depending on how many weeks out from a production it is, then we're gonna do these three things, or we're gonna recast the role, or things like that. So, yeah, the plans are always evolving, which is driving me insane.
Jamie, for the streaming option, are you charging the normal ticket price?
No, we are not. We are charging our regular show ticket prices are $18 in person. For streaming tickets, we charge $10. And in fact, I've only had one person complain about the mask requirements. And they were someone who weren't in our system, they weren't on our prospect list. I think they were just looking for a fight. But anyway, we then offered them, it's like, well, if you can't wear a mask, then you can always watch the show streaming. And they shot back that, well, it's not the same. And I'm like, you're right. That's why it's $10 instead of 18. And that took the winds right out of her sails. So.
For either of you, have you had trouble with larger groups being split up to conform to your seating plans?
We haven't had any problems with groups. I know overall group sales are down. I will share with the group that we've actually seen a lot more group sales success from actually traditional groups rather than promo codes. I thought it might be the other way around, where we wouldn't see anyone willing to organize a group of people, but we've actually found that people are willing to do that, and that they're okay with, instead of sitting 20 together, just having 2 we haven't had any issues with that.
Yeah, and we haven't either. According to the health guidelines, you can seat like 8 people together or something like that. And so we haven't had many groups of more than that trying to purchase tickets.
I'm going to bounce the same question that we asked Jamie to Matthew. How is your booking? Are you booking for 2021? How does that look for you guys?
Yeah, so we decided pretty quickly over the summer that best case scenario, we were only going to go on sale with our shows through January 16th. And that's what we did, just to try and, we knew that all the shows that we, had kind of rebooked and were planning to present through mid-January would be financially viable in the social distancing like seating model. And so right now, like, yeah, we're right in the middle of, when do you want to go on sale for spring performances, working with the artists and talking with them of, here's what we're looking at for seating capacity. Here's what we're looking at for shows. The like really quick math that works, sort of for like the performance booking is that, we're trying to get artists to say, hey, would you be willing to do 2 shorter performances, instead of 1 performance? Because, it's like we realize you have to do it twice, but then we have a lot more, capacity in terms of ticket sales to cover the fee. So that right now in the next, 8 weeks is the real crunch time on, all the plans for spring.
Nice. I think that's a very appropriate question, since the booking conferences were just being held too. And so there's a lot of discussion about, how far in advance are people booking and are artists looking at touring? Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to break up into breakout rooms. This is really for you guys to visit with one another, peer to peer. There is no agenda. You can talk about whatever you want. You can ask questions about how others are reopening. If you want to talk about what you bought at the farmer's market, I'm cool with that, right? It's just a time for you to connect, be able to talk to your peers, because we're missing that a lot right now, right? And then we'll bring you back together and we'll close out. So Chad is going to work his magic and put you into rooms. So I just wanted to wrap things up, say thank you for coming. I am going to be sending you out a really short survey. I promise it's super short. One of the main things I want to hear from you guys is looking forward. I have a session planned for November. We're going to be talking about fundraising and how to engage with donors, especially in this time. How do you do that? But then the next month is December. And so is this something, do you want to have a session in December, or is December too crazy and you want to take a month off? So that's kind of one of the main things that I want to hear from you guys. So I'm going to be sending that out either today or tomorrow. So just kind of look for that. It'll take you a little time to go through. But otherwise, thank you so much for being a part of this and participating. And we will see you all hopefully in November.